What if the solution to your biggest problem looked completely foolish? What if the reason you're struggling is because God's solution doesn't look logical? Hello and welcome to Virtuous and Noble. I'm Alicia, and on this channel, I reflect on life, human nature, and the struggles we face through a Christian perspective and biblical truth. If that resonates with you, you're in the right place. Today, I want to talk about the strange ways God solves problems. So, you've been stuck in this situation for a long time. You've tried every logical, practical solution that you could think of, but nothing worked. Now you're exhausted, you're about to give up. That's when you finally humble yourself and go to God, desperately seeking His help. You expect an answer that makes sense, something practical, something logical. But instead, God tells you to do something that seems completely foolish, even strange. You pause, you wonder, did I hear God right? But deep down, your spirit knows you did. So now you're left with a choice. Do you obey what God showed you, even when it doesn't make sense? Or do you walk away? Very often, God's strategies look simple, sometimes even foolish, to the human mind. But in reality, God's ways are always the best and the most perfect. The Bible reminds us of this truth in Isaiah chapter 55, verses 8 to 9. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. And in Corinthians chapter 1, verses 27 to 29, we read, but God had chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and God had chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty, and base things of the world, and things which are despised had God chosen, yea, and things which are not, to bring to naught things that are, that no flesh should glory in his presence. Again and again in scripture, we see that when God gives strategies, it often does not make sense logically, yet it produces miraculous results. Let's look at a few moments in the Bible where God's instructions seemed completely illogical but produced incredible miracles. When the giant Goliath stood before the army of Israel, everyone expected a trained warrior with heavy armor and powerful weapons to defeat him. But God chose a young shepherd boy, David. David did not use the sword or the spear. He was offered King Saul's armor, but after putting it on, he realized he couldn't move properly because he wasn't used to it. So he took it off. Instead, he picked up five smooth stones and a sling. To humanize, it looked foolish. How could a boy defeat a giant warrior with just a sling? But that simple strategy given by God brought down the giant with a single stone. The city of Jericho had massive fortified walls. From a military perspective, conquering it would require weapons, siege equipment, and a battle plan. But God gave Israel a very unusual instruction. They were told to march around the city once a day for 6 days, and on the seventh day, march around it 7 times. Then they were to blow the trumpets and shout, no weapons, no attack, just obedience. And when they followed God's instructions exactly, the walls of Jericho collapsed. Naaman was a powerful commander who suffered from leprosy. When he went to the prophet Elisha, he probably expected a dramatic miracle. Instead, he was given a very simple instruction: go wash yourself in the Jordan River 7 times. At first, Naaman was offended. It seemed too simple. But when he humbled himself and obeyed, his skin was completely healed. One night, Peter and the other fishermen worked the entire night to catch fish. They were professionals, they knew their job. But that night, they caught nothing. Then Jesus told Peter something unexpected. Put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch. From Peter's experience, it didn't make sense, but he obeyed anyway. And when he did, the nets became so full of fish that they began to break. A widow was about to lose her sons because she couldn't pay her debts. She had nothing left except a small jar of oil. Through Elijah, God gave her a surprising instruction: borrow empty vessels and start pouring. Logically, it didn't make sense. How can a small jar fill multiple containers? But as she obeyed, the oil kept flowing until every vessel was full. That simple act saved her children and cleared her debts. A huge crowd had gathered, and there was no food available. From a human perspective, it was impossible. But Jesus Christ took 5 loaves and 2 fish, something completely insufficient for thousands. He blessed it and broke it, and somehow it multiplied. Not only did everyone eat, but there were leftovers. So, remember, God doesn't require you to become someone else or to have more than you do. He simply asks you to come as you are and surrender what you already have. We see this in the lives of David and the widow. David tried wearing armor, but it didn't fit him, so he took it off and went as he was, using what he was familiar with. And like we discussed in the case of the widow helped through Elijah, she didn't come with abundance, she came with lack. All she had was a small jar of oil, but instead of asking for more, God said, use what you already have. These stories reveal something important. God's strategies are often simple. Sometimes they look too small, too ordinary, or even foolish. But when God gives instructions, the power is not in the method. The power is in the one who gave the instruction. That is why obedience is so important. Because when we trust God's wisdom instead of our own understanding, we step into His perfect plan. So, if God is asking you to do something that seems simple or unexpected, remember His ways are higher, His wisdom is greater, and His strategies are always perfect. So, what area of life are you resisting God's voice in? Simply because His way appears too simple or insignificant by worldly standards? Never forget that God can use you just as you are and with what you already have. I pray this message has blessed your heart and encouraged you to pursue God's will above everything else. May God bless you, and I'll see you again in my next video.